to Drunk Dog Creative. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to make a paneled Christmas card using the new one-horse open sleigh DSP from Stampin' Up. These are two examples I've made earlier, and for this one I've used Misty Moonlight and Night of Navy, which we're going to use today, and I've used the 4-tree panel. It's a 6x6 inch DSP that I've cut into 4 pieces. And then I've stepped it up with the glittery organdy ribbon and bow and some of the loose silver sequins dotted around it. This is another piece of DSP from the same set or designer series paper. And I've used Evening Evergreen, Basic White Thick, and Lost Lagoon. And I've used the Evening Evergreen gingham ribbon and again some loose sequins from my stash, and that's sort of the idea. This is another card that's really easy to make but looks really beautiful. The cut plan is quite simple. This is a 5-inch by 7-inch card, and yes, I live in Australia and usually do these videos in metrics and then provide the imperial on the site because the smaller card size is different for each country, but both countries have a 5-inch by 7-inch, and to do this one in millimeters gets really fiddly. So I'm going to keep this one in inches, as most of our rulers do both. So 10 inches long, 7 inches tall, scored at 5 inches, and folded in half. The inside sentiment piece is going to be 4.5 inches wide by 6.5 inches tall, and that's going to layer just inside to write on. That piece aside for now. You have 2 mats with this, and the mats are slightly different sizing because you want them to layer a little tighter. You want the white mat to be barely visible. So the white mat is 4 5/8 of an inch and 6 5/8 of an inch. So it's just 1/8 of an inch larger than the inside, and that layers there. Then your second mat is 4.5 inches wide by 6.5 inches tall, and that layers there. And you want that to be a very tight border. And we're going to turn, this is going to be a horizontal card. Then you take your piece of DSP, and it's a 6, oh, now I've got that backwards. It's a 6x6 inch piece. So what you want to do is cut it to 4.5 inches long, and then you want to cut each of the 4.5 inch pieces at 1.5 inch, which gives you 4 pieces in a row. And then we're going to layer it all together. You also have a scrap that's 1 inch wide and is as long as you need for your sentiment. Now, you may use different stamps to me. You may do different things. I'm going to use the Brightest Glow stamp set, and I'm going to use the sentiment that says, "To you and yours this Christmas." So this is a really good width for it, and I'll cut the length afterwards. But whatever sentiment you're going to use is up to you. So I'll talk about sentiments near the end. Let's layer it all up. So to layer this up, we're going to use the grid to give us a bit of a visual alignment. And this is my Stampin' Up grid paper pad. When the top gets full of glue or ink, you just tear a piece off and start over. And this one's in all of the new in colors for this year. And it's really helpful to help you visually align, especially tight layers. So what I'm going to do is lay these on here first, roughly where I want them. And alignment is really important with this card. So I'm going to take the first piece, and I'm going to get my Stampin' Seal, and I'm going to put my glue tape down. Now I am going to line the outside 2 pieces first, and that gives me then a guide for the inside pieces. And I know that I want that kind of 1/8 inch margin all the way around. But if I have the card square, which I don't at the moment, and you make it square by aligning it to the top and edge grid lines, then it's easier to eyeball to get that even margin all the way around. So I'm going to do the right one. You can start either side, it doesn't matter. I usually start with the right. And then I'm going to do the left. You see how I'm kind of using those lines to guide how close or how far I space this, and to make sure it's relatively straight. This is the fiddly part, the only fiddly part of the whole card. Then I'm going to do my two middle pieces, because now I can evenly space them between those and not worry too much about it. So again, just make sure this is square. And I'm going to just place that one to make sure I don't go too far over. Which just gives me a bit of a reference. And make sure that's aligned. Now I can move it top and bottom. And straight, hopefully. And then we do the last piece. And that's the card front done. It is literally that easy. Now all we have to do is layer it with the other mats. And there we have the card made. Simple, elegant, beautiful, but I am going to step it up a little. Now you can leave it just like this. You can put a sentiment tag on the front, or when you put your inside writing piece in, which we'll do in a minute, you can stamp a sentiment in there, whichever way you want. So I'm going to step this up a little bit now. I want to put a bow and some ribbon on the front. So I have made a little 1.5 inch bow with the Night of Navy bordered ribbon, which goes with both Night of Navy and with the Misty Moonlight really well. Now, normally if you're going to do a ribbon all the way across, you're going to want to put it on before you put the layers together. But of course, me being me, I wasn't thinking of that. And I didn't. And that's where your take a pick tool comes in really handy. And I'll show you in a minute why. If you're not good at tying bows, and I'm not, have a look at my video about the Zutter Bow It All, which is how I made this bow. It's been a game changer for me. So I've got about an 8-inch piece of the ribbon, and I'm going to turn the card this way, or slightly at an angle, because that's easier for me. And I want to just figure out where I want to align it. Now, there's all different ways of affixing ribbons to cards. You do it however you want to do it. I usually put a line of glue tape and stick it to it. So I just put my finger where I want the glue tape to start. And then I try to run a straight line, which usually doesn't work because nobody goes in straight lines, roughly where I want the ribbon. And then adhere the ribbon to it. And if I've gone off course like I have there, this is a really good investment. It is a glue eraser. And I can just run it along where the ribbon went, where the glue tape is that I don't want it to be. And it just removes the glue tape without damaging. Don't press too hard, but press hard enough to start to lift it. go, and it's off. So I can adjust this a little bit to where I want it. Now I'm going to change my pick to my flat blade on my pick-a tool. And I'm going to just lift this slightly from the background, just kind of break the seal under the blue mat in that corner. And I'm going to just tuck that under and seal it back down. Very simple like that. Just going to very gently lift this and put that blade through that glue to just lift that corner without damaging it. You just have to be delicate with it, but it's doable. And then you're just going to take your pick and just actually cut that a little shorter. Doesn't need to be that long, especially since this frays a little bit at the edge. Just lift it, tuck it under, and press it back down, and any remnants can come that way. So if you make a mistake and you forget to tuck your ribbon under before you put it down, you can do it afterwards. That's a very useful tool. And then I'm going to put the ribbon, the little bow on with a mini glue dot. These are fabulous. I adore them. They're a perfect size for embellishments and bows and things like that. So I use my take your pick, the pick end, to take the little glue dot off, and I put the glue dot on the back of the bow, and then I can decide where I want the bow. And since I'm going to use a sentiment, I'm going to move it over a little bit more and put it right on that ribbon. And you can leave your tails longer than the card, or you can cut them. I'm just going to take the end off diagonally with some little scissors that are really, really sharp, so you don't fray the ribbon when you cut it, and leave them hanging just a little bit. So that's one way to step the front up, is to add a ribbon and a bow. The other thing I'm going to do to step it up is to put a sentiment on the front. Now I'm going to do my sentiment. I've got my 1-inch scrap piece. I'm just going to wipe my hands quickly. And I've got out my favorite die set, which is the Stylish Shapes dies. These are great not only for sentiments, but also for interesting backgrounds and to use up scraps. And I don't want a sentiment that overwhelms the beauty of that picture. So I'm just going to use this narrow die to cut my sentiment. But I'm going to stamp my image first, because if you cut a small die like this, then it's harder to get the image right. Whereas if you stamp your image and then cut it, you can usually get it centered. So I have my stamp on my G block, and you don't want a block that's too big, otherwise it rocks, or too small, and then it doesn't stamp cleanly. This says, "To you and yours this Christmas." Light little tap in the Night of Navy ink. If you tap too hard, it gets around the edges. So light tap. Want this roughly centered on the scrap piece. And again, just a light press, and it stamps cleanly. Just gonna give that a little wipe and close my ink block. Now I'm going to center my die so that it's even and straight and doesn't cut across the message. And I'm just going to take a little piece of tape that doesn't stick to paper so much that it rips it, like washi tape, and just tape an edge of that down to hold it. Now, instead of having to get up and walk across the room to my main die machine, I have here at my desk my mini stamp and emboss, mini cut, stamp, and emboss machine, which for a limited time also comes in the new boho blue color. So I'm going to layer my sandwich and just readjust that if I need to a little bit. Sorry, should have just done it here. Tape down, put the top on, and I'm just going to run it through right here at my desk. there's my sentiment ready to use. And now I can put my sentiment on my ribbon. And if you've been watching my videos before, you know exactly what I'm going to use to do it. The dimensionals, these little honeycomb-shaped foam dots are fabulous. They are easy to use because of their honeycomb shape. They pull out easily, and they also fit some odd shapes of things. Like they have straight edges and pointy edges. So if you've got an intricate cutout, you can usually get it aligned without it showing by turning it around. Just going to put 3 little dots, which is probably overkill. I'm going to pull those dots off. Again, I'm going to square my card up on the grid lines, just because that's how I like to work. And I'm going to slide that slightly under the bow, but not too much. And I'm just going to affix that down so that you now got this lovely card. Now, if you want to step it up just a little more, I'm about to show you that. All right, here's the final step up. Like I said, you could leave it at just the ribbon. You could leave it at the ribbon and sentiment, just a sentiment. But this, I'm going to add some loose silver sequins from Stampin' Up. And you can see they're kind of white, clear, and silver and sparkly iridescent. I think they could look a little like snowflakes. And I'm going to use from the embossing accessories, the tray. If you've seen me emboss, you know that I use this to catch my powder, and then you unscrew the bottom and put it straight back in. Now I've got a little bit of a confession to make. I have 2 of these. I use one for embossing powders, and I use the other for things like glitter and sequins and beads, because I don't want any residue of glitter or sequins or beads getting accidentally mixed into my embossing powder. So I do have 2 separate trays for this. So I'm going to use this tray in this case, and I'm just going to place the card at an angle in it. Doesn't matter if it's straight or at an angle. And I'm going to take my fine tip glue from Stampin' Up and take the lid off. And I'm just going to put some random glue dots in the sky, kind of opposite diagonally from the bow, and just a little ways over. And then I'm going to wipe the tip, and this has a little pin that you have to then put inside the tip to keep the glue from clogging up. And I use my finger as a guide to guide it in, just like that, and then close it. Then I'm going to just scatter these on here. Gently shake and tap, but not too much. And some will stick and some won't. And I'll let it dry, and then I'll shake it off again. And if they're clumped too much, I can move them around a little bit when it's semi-dry. So I'll just set it aside for a minute. And while I'm setting it aside, I will tap these down and very carefully unscrew it right over the container, because they will come out of the lid. And I'll gently tap them back into their container. And pop the lid on. How easy is that? And put the screw cap back on. So, see how that's going? If I don't want as many on there as there are, I can separate them with the pick, move them around a little. If they're clumping together, I can flick some off. And you don't have to be too precise with this. The idea is just to get a subtle glittery effect with them. So it doesn't matter if they're clumped. It doesn't matter if they're spread out. You kind of get whatever you get, and that's okay. But loose ones can come off. I'm pretty happy with that, so I'm going to leave it alone. In case the ones in here have some glue residue on them, I'm going to let them dry before I put them away. And if they dry to each other or to the thing, it doesn't matter. I'll just pick them off and deal with that later. So those away. So there's your card. That's been stepped up a couple of times. As you can see, you could have left it with just the front. You can put the sentiment on the inside if you want, instead of the outside. And you have a beautiful Christmas card done very simply and easily.